Hold up, wait a minute. Y'all thought we were finished? We got some more week 4 predictions for you. Nick, Rake, and I were actually bumping dreams and nightmares before we got rolling here. It is a phenomenal Thursday to be alive and to be talking some college football with y'all. Thursday, September 21st, 2023, the last one in history. We're about to make it an absolute movie. You got a lot on your plate. Hey, we are about over the hill here to Friday. And when it comes to Friday, like at that point, you're on the doorstep of college football actually being played. So whatever you got going on, put it on pause. Enjoy this. Enjoy today. Enjoy us talking some college ball together. We're glad to have you here. This is the Hard Count. It's ball and only ball every single day of the year. 3 times a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Like I said, more predictions about to be made here in just a second. We've given you our game picks. Got some predictions for some of those specific picks, if you catch my drift. Also, with week 4 now, sad to say. Very sad to say. We're about a third of the way here through the regular season. We're not yet a third of the way. We're about to be a third of the way, though, once we get through week 4, because 4 is, of course, a third of 12. So we're a big numbers show, if you will. We love math over here. Not really, but we keep on rolling. All right, with those things that we want to learn, we also probably have to talk about Coach Prime on the back end of that, because Coach Prime and company now, they go to Eugene, Oregon. They are 21-point dogs. It would not be the first time now if Coach Prime and company walked in there and said, nice spread. It would be a shame if someone were to, dismantle it. They did that against TCU, blew up, I think it was like a 23-point spread. They were 23-point dogs when they went to Fort Worth. So it wouldn't be overwhelmingly unprecedented if they did that, and they did beat Oregon. But even so, like, we're kind of seeing that there may be a point in time here where Coach Prime and company don't get it done. Maybe, just maybe, they don't run the table and go undefeated and win the national title. Far be it for me to predict that, but let's explore that scenario and what would happen should they lose this upcoming weekend in Eugene. Because that conversation, I think, needs to be approached just a little bit. There's going to be a lot of irresponsible things said if they do lose, so I want to make sure we get out ahead of that and play our part in the responsible conversation around that. Also, we are so fortunate here at On 3 to have an elite team of people working here. And the greatest of all time, in my mind, Andy Staples, about to join the show here in just a little bit. We're going to break down just kind of the week 4 slate as a whole. Andy's actually going to South Bend, Indiana. He's going to be there for Notre Dame, Ohio State. Get his thoughts on that game. Get his thoughts on what could be in play here should Alabama and or Clemson lose. Can we explore the ripple effect of that for a second? If Clemson and Alabama lose, both of those teams, not that long ago, were just running this sport. If they both have 2 losses by week 4 of the college football season, what would that mean? We got Andy's thoughts as well as a number of other topics we explored there. So that's a great conversation. Looking forward to breaking that down. Like I said, so glad to have you here. It's college football. It's only college football. There's no agendas. There's no extra things baked into this show. It's just college football, all right? So we keep it 100 degrees around here all the time, and not when it comes to takes. I just mean 100 degrees when it comes to being just straightforward with college football. What we love, what you love. We've kind of pandered too much at the top of this thing anyway. Let's get into it. What do we want to learn from week 4 of the college football season? There's a lot of big-time matchups. With big-time matchups come big-time learning opportunities. But I think outside of those big-time matchups, there's a game being played in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and you got the LSU Tigers set to play Arkansas. LSU favored by 17 points. Almost 3 touchdowns. Not quite, but almost. You hear what I'm saying? 17-point favorite is LSU. Arkansas kind of licking their wounds. Stumbling out of that game against BYU. Didn't look great. Heartbreaker of sorts. Things getting uncomfortable right now in Fayetteville, Arkansas. My question for LSU and what I want to learn, what have we talked about so much all offseason with them and with Brian Kelly and now them going into year 2? Where are they at culturally? Where are they at culturally? Because LSU coming off a nice win against Mississippi State. Like we talked about it here Sunday morning, they got back on track from what they did last weekend. But now in this game, you don't get any points for what you did last game, right? Like we understand that's how this thing works. That's why college football is the greatest sport to ever exist, because week to week means so much. And this week means just as much as last week for LSU. And so that's great that you got a nice win, but now you got a sneaky team rolling into Baton Rouge, a team that's going to be limping in there and have something to prove. Can you hit the reset button if you're LSU? because it's not really a huge question about the roster. This roster is good enough to get back to Atlanta. Do they have the culture in place to do that? And I'm not asking if the culture is good. I think the culture is solid, but is the culture at a championship level? Because if they are, if that's where the culture's at, that's where the thermostat is set, then Brian Kelly's going to have this team ready to play. They will have dry erased last week and be ready for this week and be the same kind of team that they were last week and take care of business and cover that 17-point spread. If they don't, Arkansas, I promise you, they are talented enough. KJ Jefferson is a good enough quarterback to make this thing uncomfortable. A subplot within this game, Arkansas is going to use the quarterback run game, I would imagine, a fair amount. Like KJ Jefferson in this spot, I promise you, as Brian Kelly stated, is going to try and showcase his abilities. The tricky part with the quarterback run game now, anytime you run the quarterback, you add an extra blocker in that you wouldn't have on a running back run play. You give it to the running back, you got 9 blockers, quarterback hands it off, probably watches the whole thing happen. On a quarterback run play, the running back can now lead block for the quarterback. So what I'm saying is that is tricky and annoying to deal with during the week. It's not fun to have to dedicate a whole period to, hey, here's how we're fitting quarterback power. Here's how we're fitting quarterback sweep. It's tedious. It takes time away from other things you could do during the week, during practice. So how do they play that? Do they have an answer for that? Because they had trouble fitting the counter against Florida State. Does issues with fitting certain run plays show itself again? I don't question the front 7. I question, are we able to fit that consistently how we need to? Because if they can, good things will happen for LSU. If they can't, Arkansas is going to hang around and kind of be pesky. And in the fourth quarter, we'll look up and say, that final score is a lot closer than probably should have been if you're playing at home in your LSU and what you did last week. So should be a lot of fun. We'll watch that one. And really excited to see how much LSU is able to hit the reset button from last week. Will tell us where the culture is at. How far along is Auburn? Because Auburn went to the portal, overhauled a bunch of talent. Hugh Freeze said, hey, I want all y'all on my team because this team last year was not good enough. More power to Hugh Freeze, more power to this staff. When you have a business that's failing, what do? You go get new employees. So I don't want to make the comparison of employees to players, but with NIL, another conversation for another time. You hear what I'm saying. How far along is Auburn and how much have they meshed? Because we understand this now. For Auburn, new staff, bunch of new players. It would make sense if that takes some time to kind of get synced up and be perfect. In this game, though, it'll be a great litmus test because Texas A&M, that's a pretty solid talent roster over there. A lot of jokes being made about Jimbo Fisher and the buyout and them missing a bowl game last year. Like, say what you want. That's still a really good football team from a talent level standpoint. And they will test Auburn. Now, Auburn goes on the road. And the subplot within this for me is what's up with Peyton Thorne? How far along are we if we're Peyton Thorne? Because as good as he looked against Samford, he still has issues turning the football over. As good as this offense looked against Samford, I should say. They didn't look phenomenal against Cal, and I understand it might take a second for him to totally get comfortable because he missed all of spring practice. And we said that when he transferred to Auburn. That was my question in terms of when he would win this job. Because being able to be the quarterback of a new team, typically you see that happen when they transfer before spring practice because those 15 practices are when you do a lot of the day one installs and you kind of walk through the basics of your offense. Peyton Thorne missed all of that. So obviously he's up to speed enough to where you feel good about where he's at to be your starting quarterback. But I'll say this, for this game for Auburn, to beat Texas A&M, Peyton Thorne can't be a game manager. I wholeheartedly believe there will be plays to be made for Peyton Thorne. I think these pass catchers for Auburn are going to separate from Texas A&M like Miami's pass catchers did when we saw them in Coral Gables. Can you hit that shot? You do not win this game with a subpar stat line from Peyton Thorne. You won't do it. I think Texas A&M is going to force you to score points and answer scores. So I need Peyton Thorne to kind of step up to bat here a little bit. Now, if they lose this game, I want to make this very clear. It's house money. Like the pressure, all the pressure is on A&M in that football game. We understand that. Jimbo Fisher, I wouldn't say he's coaching for his job because that buyout is monstrous. But if he loses this football game, there's going to be a lot of noise in College Station, Texas. So for Auburn, like I said, house money. If you lose, nobody's hitting the fire alarm. But it's just a great chance for us to see, okay, where are they at as a team? How far along is this roster? How far along is this, meshing of the staff and the new players? I'm excited to watch it, and Peyton Thorne will be a focal point for them should they end up winning this football game. Now, another quarterback we got to check in on here. Let's take a look at what's going on with Drew Aller. Not all, but Aller. What happens against Iowa if that run game isn't as potent as it's been the last couple of weeks for him? And Drew Aller's looked awesome, okay? There's been no signs of him being a first-year starting quarterback. You love that. No first-year starting quarterback syndrome for him. Even so, though, every Power 5 game they've played against West Virginia and Illinois, the running game has averaged 4 yards a carry. What does that mean? It means they've been able to be balanced. It means the defense hasn't been able to key on that pass game. Now, Iowa, we know what they are. Historically, really good front seven, and right now, the defense is statistically one of the better defenses in the country when it comes to points allowed per game. Bottom line, I think Iowa's front seven will, at the very least, provide some resistance for that Penn State run game. I think they're going to at least put up a fight. And so the question then becomes, can Drew Aller put the game on his back, even if it's just for a quarter, even if it's just to kind of keep the Iowa defense honest? Can we lean on Drew Aller and put it all on him? And can he be that guy that we expected him to be when he became the starting quarterback at Penn State? When he was that high-profile recruit that came to Penn State? He's the reason for optimism. The defense, I think, in itself may ultimately make this whole conversation a moot point. We might have to wait a little bit longer to learn this about Drew Aller. But I'm just curious now. If the Penn State offense isn't able to be as balanced as they want to in the early going, Iowa just kind of plants the flag and says, you know what, whiteout conditions, we got to stop the run. We're going to sell out Drew Aller, first-year starting quarterback. You beat us. You be the one to do it. Can he? I think he can, but I want to see it. I want to see it because, again, so far, so good in that run game for Penn State. Let's stay with quarterbacks here. How about Kyle McCord, man? Big game. Biggest game of his young career to this point, being the guy at Ohio State. They go to South Bend. It's going to be the game of the week. We all understand that. Is he there? And when I say there, that's kind of an unfair amount of pressure to put on him with it being game 4 of the season. But even so, we understand Ohio State, the pressure to be the quarterback at a school like that is a little bit higher than it is other places. It is more crucial for Kyle McCord to have an elite performance week in to week out than it would be other places. One, because of the standard that's been created there. Like Ryan Day unofficially, officially has created the standard. If you're our quarterback in Columbus, Ohio, you go and, you at least have a chance to win the Heisman Trophy. You're probably a finalist, and you're a first-round draft pick. That is the standard. So that in itself kind of creates some pressure by nature of the shoes you got to step into. But the other side of that is, by nature of the playmakers on this offense, you better be able to unlock those. We can't have a game where Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't getting his and eating greedy because you're having problems serving it up to him. We can't have issues with you being inaccurate. And in this game against Notre Dame, I think this Fighting Irish defense is going to have something cooked up, similar to what I said about Peyton Thorne. There is no scenario for Ohio State where Kyle McCord game manages his way out of South Bend with a win. And that's not really been his style. To be fair, they haven't had to open it up too much yet against Indiana and against Western Kentucky. We haven't really had to see them rev the engine too much just yet. But to the same token, we need to see them do it in this game. We need to see him throw the football, I think, a fair amount for them to beat Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. So how far along is he? The question I have is he there? Is he at that level of play in week 4 to where we can start talking about how they stack up with Penn State, how they stack up against Michigan, and already have this variable of Kyle McCord and what he is at quarterback being a more solid variable of that piece? There's less variance with what we expect from Kyle McCord. I'm curious to see in this game. Now, on the other side of things, man, when it comes to Notre Dame, and we were going to talk about this in our prediction segment a little bit, but I want to preview it a little bit now. Notre Dame, man, where's that extra gear at? Well, again, we have a prediction on this a little bit later, but we understand. I think that Ohio State and Kyle McCord are going to score points. I think they will force the issue. So that falls back on Sam Hartman. We've talked about new Notre Dame. I've said multiple times, this is not your Rudy's Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman brought some juice to that operation. Challenge everything. Sam Hartman is here for a game like this. We think they have that extra gear. We've seen it against other teams. But to do it against NC State and to do it against Ohio State, two very different operations. So again, we'll talk about that more in this live show a little bit later. But those are things I want to learn, man. Great learning opportunities across the board in college football this week. I cannot wait for it. and it's going to be a whole lot of fun. So roll, party, roll. Let's get out the notepad. Let's take some notes, and let's learn a thing or two this week 4 of the college football season. Hey, appreciate y'all tuned in live, man. Phenomenal crowd. It's a Thursday. Y'all got a lot going on. Like I said, the best messages I get from social media, both on Instagram and on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at JD Pickell. Y'all get at me and let me know, hey, I'm listening right now, and I'm at my job at the golf course, or I'm at the office. I'm overlooking whatever in my certain, high-rise apartment, whatever. Like, however, wherever, whenever y'all are watching, listening, let me know, because those are the best things to hear from y'all. Also, we got a nice little streak going, and I'm just going to say this right now. I'm going to say it one time. We have a streak going of 100 likes before we get off the air. We are currently at 23 shows. Let's make it 24. Right? So if everyone could like the video right now, we'd be well over that. That'd be 24 shows in a row. Let's keep the streak alive. So thank you in advance for that. We got some more picks to make, got some more predictions and some prize picks to make. I want to start with prize picks, though, because I told y'all I guess it was our Tuesday show, I told y'all, I sat right here and I said, listen, we have come so close, so close, a couple weeks in a row to cashing out big. Last week, I think we were 3 yards off from cashing out at all. I sat right here, I told y'all, this week, we're giving you winners. We're giving you winners. There's no way around it, all right? So for prize picks, we have a nice little 6-square projection set for this upcoming Saturday. I call this the more special, all right? A lot of mores headed your way. We like to see good things happen to good people. Sorry about it, all right? So first off, Keon Coleman, half a receiving touchdown. Give me the more. We're going to be in the building for that one, and we're going to watch Keon Coleman score a touchdown and watch him check that off for his projection for prize picks. Same game now. Will Shipley, friend of the program. They're giving us half a rushing touchdown. We'll take the more on that as well. Clemson is going to have to run the football to get things churning offensively. Watch him tote the rock. Xavier Weaver, receiver for Colorado. No Travis Hunter now. He already gets his every single Saturday. Expect him to be targeted a little bit more with no Travis Hunter in the lineup. Half a touchdown, whether it's receiving or rushing. We're taking the more on that against Oregon. Now, Bucky Irving. His number is set at 80.5 rushing yards. Give us the more against Colorado. Colorado, we love you. Deion Sanders said it. Hey, y'all hadn't stopped anybody all day. That's against Colorado State. That's fine. But we, I think, like Bucky Irving and what he does running the football. They've allowed over 200 yards rushing 2 of the 3 games they've played. So we're going to take the more on 80.5 rushing yards for Bucky Irving, the running back for Oregon. Here's a sneaky one now. Rivaldo Fairweather, tight end for Auburn. Mismatch nightmare. He's already shooting up draft boards. Transfer from FIU to Auburn. They like him a lot. 23.5 receiving yards. Give us the more against Texas A&M. A&M have a little bit of issues in the secondary. I don't think they have someone that matches up with him very well. So give us the more there. And the final one right here. Jace McClellan. Rushing touchdown. They're giving us half a rushing touchdown. We'll go ahead and take the more, and we'll take that all the way to a 6-square play here for prize picks, and it's going to be an absolute blast. So thank you for being locked in with us. Redeem code JD, okay? 100% deposit match up to $100. Say, JD, I only have $5. That's fine. Put it in. Prize picks, they'll match you if you redeem code JD. Your $5, that's $10, and then we make sure that we check all those squares off and good things are happening, okay? So the more special is in play. Good things happening to good people. Sorry we root for points. Sorry we root for yards and touchdowns, right? Okay, sue us, right? It is what it is. Actually, no, please do not sue us. That would be terribly unfortunate. But even so, the party rolls on. Okay, like I said, we got some more predictions to make. That's the prize picks, so make sure you tail us there. And we got some more predictions for week 4. And we gave you our game picks already, but I still want us to kind of walk through this together and unpack some things that we can more specifically expect. Anybody can pick a score. That's easy to pick a score and say, I pick that team to win. 50-50, right? I mean, theoretically, it's a little bit different than that, but you hear what I'm saying. 1 in 2 chances. We're going to give you some predictions for the actual things we're going to see in these big-time matchups this upcoming Saturday. Before we do that, though, make sure you're subscribed right here. It's college football and only college football every single day live. Not once, not twice, but 3 times a week. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern, live and living color. It's college football, nothing but college football. Nothing extra, no additives, no extra sugar, no chemicals you don't want to be consuming in your college football content, just ball and only ball. So thank you for locking in with us. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Jody Pickell. A lot of interaction we can have there. Just want to hear from y'all on what you think about this upcoming slate for this Saturday. Okay, first prediction for week 4 of the college football season. In addition to the game picks we've already made, I think Shedeur Sanders, man, I think he plays well enough to keep Colorado in this football game. Now, we're going to give out our gambling picks on my Instagram at Jody Pickell, but I think Colorado with the points is a phenomenal play because of what he brings to the table. I mean, we all saw what he's done to this point in the year. Dude is a special player. The offense goes through him. And I think Sean Lewis has cooked up a game plan every single week that has allowed him to be successful. And the big thing for me now, the Oregon secondary, a little shady now. A little shady, little Marshall Mathers special, Slim Shady on the back end there for Oregon. I don't love what I've seen from them. Now, they played well enough against Texas Tech to get a win, but even so, those yards allowed. I don't love it. I think Shedeur Sanders is looking at that and kind of licking his lips. The big thing now, the pass rush for Oregon is going to, I think, give Shedeur Sanders problems. So watch out for extended plays here and watch when the guys on the back end have to plaster 2 receivers. I think this receiving core is also really talented for Colorado. That's kind of a no-duh statement. Jimmy Horn Jr., Xavier Weaver, like those guys are just tough to cover for 2.5 seconds, let alone 4.5 seconds. And you're closer to that 4.5-second number when Shedeur Sanders is back there playing Pirates of the Caribbean, making guys miss and throwing the ball downfield. So does Colorado win the football game? I wouldn't bet on that, but I do think Shedeur Sanders plays well enough to where you're checking this game in the third quarter, you're like, man, Colorado's really hanging in there in Eugene. Man, okay, Shedeur, I see you. You got over 250 passing yards so far. All right. I think he finishes the day somewhere around 300, and I think he keeps Colorado in that football game. Jaheim Bell is a tight end for Florida State that a lot of y'all already know, and he is a Swiss Army knife. He played running back at times for South Carolina last year. Like, that in itself is just a ridiculous statement to have your tight end sub in at running back when you're in a situation where you're dinged up in that running back room. He is going to be a difference maker this Saturday against Clemson. We're going to be at this game, going to be an absolute blast, but I'm telling you, Jaheim Bell, the way that he is able to be a matchup problem is what will make him a problem in this game for Clemson. On top of that, who does Florida State have playing wide receiver for them? You got Johnny Wilson, who's like 11 feet tall, and you have Keon Coleman. Both of those individuals command a ton of attention. A ton of attention. Like, that is going to cause the safeties to have to give a little bit of extra help over the top. You don't want to have one-on-one with no safety help with either one of those cats. So what happens then? Middle of the field, parts like the Red Sea, open sesame, right? Jaheim Bell, he gets some real estate to work with. You're not covering him with a linebacker. Heck, I don't feel great about him with the safety on him with that much room to work. So watch the attention that those receivers get and watch Jaheim Bell get active. This coming Saturday, he will have a big role, and he's going to put a lot of people on notice that weren't already on notice with what he's bringing to the table for Florida State. Speaking of being put on notice, man, I think this is the week where everyone becomes aware of Dillon Gabriel. Now, a lot of y'all already know the name Dillon Gabriel. You know he's playing quarterback for Oklahoma. You know he transferred from UCF. You know he's been with Jeff Lebby for a while. But he's been doing numbers like Goodwill Hunting right now. He has been going crazy. Over 900 yards so far on the season, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception, 82% completion percentage. Only 3 incompletions last week against Tulsa. Now, that's kind of the big caveat there, right? Hey, it was against Tulsa. Hey, it was against Arkansas State. Hey, it was against SMU. I hear all that, but this game against Cincinnati, going to have the proper spotlight for Dillon Gabriel. Okay, we're going to have big noon kickoff there. It's going to be Cincinnati playing a Big 12 opponent before Oklahoma leaves for the SEC. And this isn't necessarily the game where, you know, everybody just gets on red alert for Dillon Gabriel and he's in the Heisman conversation. Like, this is the kind of game where you sort of take notice of him because of it being on the road, because of the opponent, because of the spot with Big Noon. It's kind of that situation where your alarm hasn't gone off just yet. Like, you don't have to get up for work just yet. It's not 6 a.m., but you kind of wake up a little bit and check the phone and say, oh, okay, it's 4 a.m. I got to get up soon. That's what people are going to be saying about Dillon Gabriel. I don't have to be on red alert just yet. My alarm's not going off just yet. That's going to be Red River when they play Texas. But the alarm is about to go off. You're kind of getting a gauge for, okay, maybe keep an eye on Dillon Gabriel. So watch out for him. I think he goes berserk this coming weekend against Cincinnati. So much talk about Alabama. And it's very much so well-deserved that we're talking about Alabama. They have earned it in not the best way, to be real with y'all, and you already know that. But they don't look great against USF. Lost to Texas. The quarterback room seems like it's finally settled on Jalen Milroe, which you love if you're an Alabama fan. I think we see a new Alabama this week. And when I say we see a new Alabama, I mean we see a new Alabama than what we've been accustomed to seeing so far this year. Because listen, man, like it's now or never for Bama. It is. Like this is the week. If you lose to Ole Miss, the SEC is definitely still an attainable goal. I mean, winning the SEC, that is. But the college football playoff, see ya. That's not available. You can't make the college football playoff with 2 losses, or so history would tell us. There is so much now that is, I think, feeding into this being the time for Bama to kind of flip the switch and turn it around. Because there was some doubt around Bama going into the year that I think they fed off of. But I think there was also enough positive reinforcement from other places saying, no, watch this, watch Bama. Like a lot of people, myself included, were like, yeah, everyone's talking down on Bama. Watch them do what they were going to do. Like it was so funny. The doubt was almost flipped around by the time SEC Media Days came here to where the media picked Alabama to win the West. Like that was, like, I think, the narrative that shifted so much throughout the course of that offseason from Bama losing multiple games, finishing against Kansas State, and then now the doubt conversation almost elevated them to this spot where we're expecting Bama to react to that doubt. And so now I think you have a quarterback change that matches the style of play you want to play. You got Jalen Milroe, who can get downhill if they call some quarterback design runs for him. Tommy Reese, if you're watching, maybe dial that up a little bit. Appreciate you in advance for that. They're playing at home. They have an SEC opponent now. There is no, it was a letdown spot. It was USF. It was Texas, but that wasn't the SEC. Now you got Ole Miss coming to town. Former employee Lane Kiffin on the sideline for Ole Miss, for Nick Saban. They will have their undivided attention. So much external noise now. Actually saying, well, what's up with Bama? All the people that were doubting Bama, they're feeling pretty good about themselves right about now. When it comes to this game, too, you've already had the players-only meeting after USF. You had you get your mind right kind of moment against USF. This is the spot where Bama has to turn it around. And so for me, I am betting that Nick Saban hasn't lost his fastball, hasn't lost his touch, and knows how to motivate his team, knows how to get them up for this game. So I'm betting on that, and I think we see Bama turn it around, see the offensive line dominate, see Jalen Milroe play within a system that suits him, and I think Bama is Bama and gets it done this weekend. I talked about Notre Dame a little bit a second ago. I want to talk about them again. I think that extra gear is real. I said I want to learn it earlier. I think I'll call my shot right now. I think they score over 30. And I think it will take over 30 to beat Ohio State. And this is going to be a perfect learning moment for us about Notre Dame because Sam Hartman, coming to Notre Dame, you brought him in for games like this. Not just because it's a big game, not just because you want to be a college football playoff contender, because you're about to play an offense that has the tools now to be extremely potent. Now, will they be? That falls on Kyle McCord. But you got some guys in that room over there that make you nervous with Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, Trevian Henderson. We go down the list here. You know those names. We talk about those guys a lot. But that's still a question for us. Can Notre Dame keep pace? I think they can. I'm calling my shot. I already told you I think Notre Dame wins that football game, and I think they win it because of how they're able to match offensive output. And a big part of that is Sam Hartman. So to give you the answer to what we're hoping to learn, I think Sam Hartman and this Notre Dame offense is for real. And I'll say it again, I think they come out swinging. I think they're throwing the football all over the yard to start the game and then go to Audric Estime once that box loosens up a little bit. So a lot to be learned, but those are our predictions. Again, Shedeur Sanders plays well enough to keep Colorado in it. Jaheim Bell, massive difference maker this weekend for Florida State. Just a mismatch nightmare. So much attention commanded by those Florida State wide receivers. Watch him eat and eat greedy. Dillon Gabriel. Alarm's not going off just yet. We're not catapulting him into that Heisman Trophy conversation, but we do start to talk about him just a little bit differently. Just a little bit of Dillon Gabriel's actually kind of killing it right now. Interesting. You'll hear some of that New Bama. New Bama as in back to old Bama, as in we're going to dominate you on the line of scrimmage. If not now, when for Bama? Notre Dame's extra gear offensively. Oh, it's for real. There's some horsepower there. And we're going to see those boys let the horses run this coming Saturday in South Bend, Indiana. Going to be a lot of fun. Going to be a lot of fun, man. I cannot wait. Cannot wait for us to get to watch some things just kind of take shape in the college football landscape this year, man. Like we're so close to getting a better gauge for these conference races when conference play starts. But we got a lot of great non-conference games going down this weekend. I mean, Notre Dame, Ohio State. I guess Notre Dame's not even in a conference, so that in itself kind of answers that own question. Well, also, I mean, I guess we have a lot of conference games taking shape too with Florida State, Clemson, Colorado, Oregon. Pac-12, man. This isn't a segment, but how fitting is it for the Pac-12 just to throw a party before they turn the lights out on that operation? Michael Penix Jr., he's balling. Had a lot of Washington fans in my mentions last night. Shout out to y'all. It's a good time. Bo Nix, killing it. Caleb Williams, I think still the best player in college football. Oh, by the way, Utah, they're back-to-back Pac-12 champions. A lot to be said there. DJ Uiagalelei, too. We talk about him a little bit later in the show with Andy, but I don't think he was the issue at Clemson. So we'll leave it at that here. I want to talk about Coach Prime here in just a quick second and kind of get ahead of this conversation with what's potentially in play with Oregon. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you all about Bird Dogs. Listen, man, Bird Dogs, good people there, first of all. Great people running that operation. Second of all, and this is important, we are going through a time of the year where we are transitioning from short season to pants season. Y'all know what I'm talking about here. Weather's kind of changing. The people watching the show in the Northeast, I feel for y'all right now, kind of getting a little more crispy outside, all right? Shorts, we love them and wear them as long as we can. It's transitioning out of that time, okay? We got to wear some pants now. I hate it, you hate it, but it's true. Good news, though, Bird Dogs got you covered. Great looking pants, so you're still styling. No issues there, no setbacks there. You don't want to be that guy just wearing baggy sweats every single day of the week. A couple times a week, sure, but you want to wear something nice. Bird Dogs got you covered there. Also, comfortable. You don't have to sacrifice for the stiff khakis that feel like cardboard on your thighs and you can't really even get full range of motion walking around the office. Don't be that guy. Don't go through that. Get you some Bird Dogs. Moving from shorts to pants season, they got you covered. Now, you redeem code JD at checkout. Get you a nice little Hydro Flask style water bottle. Yeah, that's the real game changer here for your fall experience. Throw a little pumpkin cold brew in there. Yeah, that's what we're doing here. That's what we're about. So go ahead, get you something from Bird Dogs. Again, redeem code JD for that Hydro Flask style water bottle. Good times are rolling. So we appreciate Bird Dogs bringing that to y'all and bringing the hard count to this operation right now. So thank you in advance for y'all rolling with Bird Dogs. Okay, I mentioned this a little bit, but we got to get into it here. Coach Prime in Colorado have a tremendous opportunity in front of them. They go to Eugene, Oregon. They're 3-touchdown underdogs. And Vegas, again, is betting against Coach Prime. We picked Oregon in this football game. So I want to have that out there. Now, if Oregon goes out there and beats Colorado, there's going to be a lot of overreaction talk. A lot of people saying, well, we knew Coach Prime wasn't this, we knew Coach Prime wasn't that. A lot of people quick to grab their receipts that they were being polled about them being wrong about Colorado and bring them back to the cashier and say, no. Look, hey, I was right about Colorado. Look how they lost to Oregon. Now, if they win the football game, this whole conversation is just drastically different on Sunday morning, and we're pouring rocket fuel on the Coach Prime experience, and that thing's leaving orbit. Okay, so there's that. But going back to this, there will be overreaction abomination if Coach Prime and company lose in Eugene, which is wild because 3 touchdowns, we kind of understand here. That number in itself is telling us something about how Vegas feels about this game. It is what it is, but I don't think that that's necessarily a fair response to have to where Deion Sanders is right now. More on that in a second. Make sure you're dialed in. College football every single day of the week, live 3 times a week as we are right now. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. We got content for you Monday too, so make sure you're dialed in. Make sure you're subscribed. We got you covered. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Twitter at JD Piquel. Appreciate you in advance for that. 2 things can be true. 1, what Coach Prime has done is literally a hard restart to the college football landscape. Athletic directors across the country are going to ask the head coaches they hire this next coaching carousel cycle and say, well, can you do what Coach Prime did? Can you get me a new roster? Can you overturn what we had last year and make it a winning operation? Can you do that for me? Because Coach Prime did it at Colorado. Why can't you? We understand now Deion Sanders is a one of one. He's got star power through the roof, so there's more to that than what meets the eye. But understand, he has done nothing short of change the landscape in college football. He has done, you can't overstate the impressive nature of what he's done. That is true. That's number one. Overachieved, can't talk about how impressive it is. First part. Second part of this, though, which deserves to live in the same neighborhood as that conversation, maybe Colorado's not going to win the Pac-12 their first year, right? Maybe it's not a finished product when you overhaul 80 new players. Maybe you're not at the level of an Oregon or a USC or a Washington, or you go down the list here, or a Utah. Maybe not. Is that wrong? No, it's not wrong. Is it down on Deion Sanders? No, it's not down on Deion Sanders. Other part of this, though, you're going to get a lot of people saying, well, you don't believe. Well, you're a hater. Well, you want to see Coach Prime fail. Nobody's saying that. Come on, let's rein in a little bit here. Nobody's talking about that with Deion Sanders. I just told you what he's done is nothing short of impressive, historic, whatever adjective you want to throw at it. But at the exact same time, just because they've had success in year one, if they lose a football game, we're not overreacting either way. But if they win a football game, it legitimizes them to a whole new level. We understand that. But I don't think we should talk about them in this Pac-12 title light just based on what we've seen from the first three games. Now, I would say this. Like I said, if they beat Oregon, heck, if they just split Oregon and USC, you want to talk about I believe, you don't believe, you should believe, you might believe, you don't believe. This whole belief conversation goes out the window. Because you know what believing is? In college football, believing is seeing. And we haven't seen a ton from Coach Prime just yet. We've seen some good things. We've seen some really good things. I just told you we've seen some historic things from them, but we haven't seen them beat a Pac-12 top-tier team just yet. Now, if they do it, hats off, conversation changes. Like I said, that legitimizes them in a whole new way. But nobody is wrong here for saying, yeah, they're really impressive, but they also may not be the cream of the crop in the Pac-12. So, on top of that, it's year one. This whole operation has been an incredible ride, an incredible experience for the college football world as a whole. It's brought in new viewership from an audience standpoint. It's broke viewership records on TV. You got people staying up to 1:30 a.m. to watch Colorado State. How wild of a sentence is that if you were to go back in time 2 years ago and say you're all staying up past midnight to watch Colorado State? Not even a Pac-12 conference game. You got Colorado State being a group of 5 team, playing Colorado, and we're staying up late to watch that one. Why? Because of Coach Prime. Okay, so it's year one. This is a starting point for them. And we said it going into the year. If they have a proof of concept, if they have some games that they win here, this thing is going to get rolling really quickly. Because now, with what they've done to this point, with the excitement they've generated, with the guys they've been able to get on campus, with the way that they've kind of gained some momentum on the field, that's going to alleviate a lot of questions some top recruits in the country would have had. Because the question you had going into it was, well, that's great you got this plan. That's great that you are one of the greatest players of all time, and I respect that. And that itself might get me to come to Colorado, but the other side of this is, well, am I going to have to suffer through 3 or 4 losing seasons? Am I going through the entire rebuild? Do I have to build a foundation of this program and then come back in a couple of years and watch us win when I'm an alumni? I think Coach Prime and what they've done to this point has laid the foundation enough to where if you're a recruit, you understand when you walk in, there's a pretty solid foundation to stand on by nature of what they've done through the portal. And Deion Sanders, he'll use the portal again. They'll go get great players. But long term, I think Deion Sanders wants to recruit at the high school level. And the great news is, once they have that base solid enough, and I think they're getting there, probably a year or so away, they can rely more heavily on the high school level. So for Deion Sanders, man, I think what they've done right now is provide a ton of ammunition for what they can use in the recruiting trail. And I want to say this, his prime is ahead of him as a head coach. Whether we want to talk about that or not, because I think the moment itself is so captivating, but the prime for Deion Sanders, his best days are ahead of him at Colorado, which is crazy to say based on what they've done to this point, getting game day to come to town, big noon kickoff essentially now being big noon Colorado. It's extremely impressive and deserves a ton of praise. But what they're going to do because of the proof of concept they've provided now for recruits and for guys at the high school level, best days are ahead of them. So, Deion Sanders and company, if they win at Oregon, things taken off to the moon. If they lose, let's not overreact. Let's not say he's a fraud. Let's not say he's a failure. Let's just understand that the win total for them going into the season was 3.5 wins. They're sitting at 3 right now. So if you had the over there, should feel pretty good about that cashing. So that's Coach Prime and company. And, man, great test this coming weekend. Great test this coming weekend. Going to be a lot of fun to watch that. So speaking of this coming weekend, we were fortunate enough to chop it up with one of the GOATs in our space, and that's Andy Staples. Dude is a college football icon, played the game, understands the game, covers the game better than anybody else out there. So we sat down with him and just kind of got a feel for, hey, what is this conversation around Colorado going to be going forward? Hey, how should we approach Colorado? So we talk about that at the top of this conversation. Also unpack everything with Ohio State, Notre Dame, unpack Bama and Clemson, what happens if they lose, all that in a bag of chips. Great conversation. Excited for y'all to hear this. Without further ado, here's Andy Staples. Andy, feels like this is a week in college football that we have had circled really since media days. Like, there's so many big-time matchups. You got Ohio State, Notre Dame. You got Florida State, Clemson. You got Colorado, Oregon. Like, just a multitude of big-time matchups. I mean, how are we feeling going into this week? Does it feel like we're about to just get, like, some seismic headlines that are going to shape the rest of the season to you?
Yeah, I kind of wish they could have sprinkled this a little more throughout the first 3 weeks. Like, why is it all now? Because I'm thinking about, I'm looking at windows, like noon, you know, I want to watch Auburn and Texas A&M, but I also really want to watch Oklahoma and Cincinnati. And it's like, these could be not in the same place. You know, you could not have Oregon and Colorado bumping up against Alabama and Ole Miss. You could not have a whiteout game at Penn State against Iowa bumping up against Notre Dame and Ohio State and South Bend. Like, guys, you had 3 other weeks you could have put some of these games in.
There's absolutely zero moderation from the good people running college
no,
football.
It's like,
hey, let's dump it all on one weekend, and you just go ahead and gorge yourself as a college football fan.
Yeah, but, it's like we were eating salads, and then all of a sudden they just give us a Golden Corral.
Diet's over. We're back to gorging our faces when it comes to college football as a product. But, you know, one team that has kind of carried a lot of the juice for the early part of the season is Coach Prime and company. Like, the over-under win total was 3.5 in Vegas, and now they're sitting right there at 3-0. Big one in Eugene this weekend. And I want to kind of just approach this conversation around belief with Colorado, because there was a point in time, especially early in the year, where it was like, hey, if you don't believe in Colorado, you're a bad person. Like, that was kind of like the narrative for some people on the outside looking in. Like, what do you make of Colorado in this whole belief conversation when it comes to this game against Oregon?
I feel like with Colorado, you and I should probably have a new segment on each of our shows that says, so you've decided to like college football because of Colorado and Deion. Like, let us explain to you how this crazy sport works, because it's kind of nuts. And there's some stuff you're going to be confused by. So I think that's maybe the way to do it. And then maybe we don't have people sending death threats to a dude who it was a late hit. Yeah, but I don't think he was trying to do anything really bad. So it's amazing to me how the narrative has flipped a couple times on Deion, because it was, how dare you kick all those kids off the team? Oh, wait, you kicked all those kids off the team because they were not that good, and the ones you brought in are better. Oh, okay, well, that's fine. And then it's, yeah, but you can't get the big guys. You're not going to, and I'm as guilty of that as anybody. I didn't think you could get functional lines of scrimmage out of the transfer portal. And I'd say that question still remains unanswered, but we'll get an answer, or at least an approximation of an answer this week, because Oregon has very good line of scrimmage play. They have very good athletes on the line of scrimmage, like Josh Conerly, former 5-star at left tackle, doing the traditional thing of, you know, he was there as a freshman, but now as a sophomore, he's coming into his own. You're like, oh, that's why he was a 5-star. And then you've got Brandon Dorlus, who feels like he's been on their D-line for, you know, since Chip Kelly was coaching, but also Jordan Birch, who transferred from South Carolina, who was a 5-star also. And you see those 5-star prospect flashes when he plays, and you're like, okay, this is a team that clearly has been built on the line of scrimmage going back to when Mario Cristobal was the coach, because that is how they feel you can compete on a national level. Colorado is probably going to bump into that this week, and that's going to be a problem because, TCU not quite where Oregon is on that level. Nebraska is not there yet, but this is the real deal. This is a team that can compete for the Pac-12 title, that can compete for a college football playoff berth. And, oh, by the way, their skill players are also really fast.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where, like, it's two things can be true. Like, Colorado could be a phenomenal story to this point. They could have overachieved, and, like, nobody has, seen what Deion Sanders has done at Colorado, I think, like, ever in college football, and it's phenomenal. But also, it's like, are they a top-tier team in college football? No. And, like, nobody's a hater. Nobody's down on Deion Sanders. No. Nobody's anti-Colorado. It's just like, this is really impressive. Also, this is Oregon. They're not necessarily on the same playing field, and that's why
and you don't have Travis Hunter.
Points.
Right. You don't have Travis Hunter, who is that player that is special. Like, Travis Hunter might be better than all of Oregon's players.
Yeah.
But he's not playing. So that's the thing. How are you better at, if you go down the list, maybe Shedeur Sanders is better than Bo Nix. It's a
which
conversation.
Is crazy.
Yeah, but that just speaks highly of Shedeur Sanders. I mean, he's come to this level. And look, Shedeur Sanders was recruited at this level. If Deion hadn't gone to coach at Jackson State, Shedeur Sanders already would have been a Power 5 quarterback. So, but that position, perhaps Dylan Edwards, maybe. But how many positions can we say Colorado is definitively better than Oregon at this position? It's going to be Oregon better than Colorado at almost all of them.
And so what happens then after this game? Like, I feel like there's going to be an overreaction either way, and it might not be an overreaction if Colorado somehow finds a way to win this game. If they dismantle another 3 touchdowns,
we'll overreact.
Like, okay, like that's crazy. But if they
we'll
lose,
overreact to that for sure.
Yeah, like that would be insane. But if they lose, it feels like there's going to be this really loud opinion saying, well, Colorado's not any good. Like, where do they go from here if they do end up doing what Vegas says they're going to do and end up losing this game?
So, for me, if they're competitive in this game, I'm looking at that is a tremendous coaching job by Colorado's staff. That to have that roster be competitive on the road against Oregon. And again, I'm not talking about if they win. I'm talking about if they're within a couple of touchdowns. If that game is a one-possession game sometime in the second half. That's going to be a triumph for their staff because it's hard to take a bunch of guys out of the transfer portal, put them together, and then send them on the road against a team that is this talented and well coached, by the way, and be competitive. It says that next year, when they do get more of their own guys in, they've had these guys a little longer, maybe they flip some guys out of your 2024 class, elite recruiting schools around the country, they're going to be pretty damn good.
Yeah, and Warren Sapp saying he's going to join that coaching staff unofficially, I guess, with Rich Eisen and co. Like, the future is bright in Colorado, without a question. And very, very big game. I mean, also that one obviously will have incredible impact, and it'll be fun to watch. But probably the game of the upcoming Week 4 slate is Ohio State going to South Bend, Indiana. Andy, you're going to be there. Ohio State's favored in this game. Does that feel funny to you like it feels funny to me with Kyle McCord and how they kind of didn't look as impressive those first 2 games of the season?
No, because they still have the most special player on the field in Marvin Harrison Jr. And the way the defense played last week, I know some people are going to look at that and say it's just Western Kentucky. But you and I both know how good Austin Reed is and how good their passing game is. Yeah. And Ohio State shut it down. And I think that says a lot. And this game will tell us a lot about where Ohio State is because – remember, what's been the problem at Ohio State the past 2 seasons? Too many big plays, too many chunk plays through the air that really diminish everything else they do on a down-to-down basis on defense and put the offense in some tough spots. If they can eliminate those, we're talking about a team that can win the national title. And they're going to get tested here. I think it's interesting because if you look at what Notre Dame's offense is with Sam Hartman in it, they don't run the same plays as Michigan, but they have a similar style to Michigan where they're going to try to pound you up front and they're going to set up play action with the run. And when they do run effectively, they can be explosive in the pass game. And I think that's going to be a great test for Ohio State. Meanwhile, for Notre Dame, we've all been wondering what happens if they ever get that quarterback, if they ever get somebody who really can truly stretch the field. Ian Book was good for them, took them to the playoff a couple times, but Sam Hartman's on a different level. And so how good are they offensively? How well do they stack up against the truly elite programs in the country when they've got that quarterback? We're going to get our answer.
I mean, we haven't seen them have a quarterback like this since what? Jimmy Clausen? Like Brady Quinn? I mean,
Brady
those
Quinn,
are some names
maybe, yeah.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute. So, I mean, who does this game mean more to in your mind? Both teams have a pretty steep climb. Should you drop this one with Ohio State still having Penn State and Michigan? Notre Dame's got to play Clemson and USC. I mean, who does this mean more to?
So I think Notre Dame actually could make the playoff with a loss this year as long as they beat one of Ohio State or USC and have a very narrow loss to the other one. So I don't think the seasons or the playoff chances are over if Notre Dame loses this one, as long as it's competitive. Ohio State, same thing. Obviously, they would be back against the wall in Big Ten play. I think it's probably more important for Ohio State because if you lose this one, you got to play Penn State and Michigan. And then you've still got to get through that unscathed. Really, we haven't seen a 2-loss team make the 14 playoff yet. You know, next year, no problem. You have 2 losses, you're still going to make the playoff. But this year, if you lose this one, that means you got to go perfect against Penn State and Michigan. That's a big ask.
And Notre Dame, too, going back to that, I'm curious to see if they drop this game, no conference title game, how much. I mean, we've seen them, be hurt by that in the past. But I think I'm with you here with Kyle McCord and everything that they're breaking in that's new and how good the rest of the Big Ten is. Like those games against Penn State and Michigan, it sounds crazy to say. It feels tougher than the Clemson USC gauntlet. And, it's kind of just is what it is right now. But going to what we're talking about with Clemson,
JD,
go ahead.
JD.
Yeah.
Don't forget who Notre Dame plays after Ohio State.
They have
they got to go to Duke.
Ohio State.
They got to go to Duke.
Gotta go to Duke. See, that wasn't even on my radar. That wasn't even on my radar that they had Duke still left. I mean, it's going to be, it's a gauntlet. It's a gauntlet either way for both these teams. I mean, you don't want to drop one regardless ever, but with what they have ahead of them, I mean, it's an extremely impactful game for a number of reasons. I mean, when it comes to what we're talking about, though, with Clemson, them and Alabama both sporting an L going into week 4 of the college football season feels so bizarre. I mean, in a world where they have 2 losses after week 4, like what are we saying about Bama and Clemson after this week? Should they both lose their respective games?
We're saying that the problems are not imagined, that they are real. It's not something that can be fixed probably this season. It's something that probably needs to be overhauled. And I realize there are fans of programs that perennially go 6-6 that are like, oh no, they're going to go 9-3. That's the worst thing. No. For them, it is the worst thing ever. Like, they're not used to this. This is not what they're built for. And it's probably worse for Clemson because at least if Alabama loses to Ole Miss, Alabama's SEC hopes are still ahead of them. And unless Ole Miss somehow goes undefeated through the SEC, which I doubt would happen. Clemson, if they lose to Florida State, they'll have 2 ACC losses in September. They're probably out because probably if they lose to Florida State and are sitting there with 2 ACC losses, there's a chance they pick up one more, and that's the one that actually knocks them out of the ACC title race. But it's really one of those things where you go, okay, now we have to examine what has to change for them to get back to where they were with either one of these programs. And I think, with Alabama, this is an interesting one because Lane Kiffin has played them fairly close historically. That team last year, Lane was pretty upfront about Ole Miss's early success last year was pretty schedule-based. And they had that backloaded schedule. And then they did lose quite a bit in the backloaded schedule. The Alabama game was only a 6-point game, though. That's one where a worse Alabama team and a little bit better Ole Miss team, that result probably gets flipped. Well, that kind of sounds like what you have this year.
And what are we saying about Lane Kiffin if they do beat Alabama? I think there's so much conversation around on one side, if they don't beat Bama this year and you're an Ole Miss fan, you're saying, okay, if not now, then when? Like, when are we actually going to get over this hump? But if he beats Nick Saban, like the conversation around Lane Kiffin being a close to tier 1 head coach in college football, I think you actually have to start looking at that as a possibility. What does this mean for Lane Kiffin in this one?
Well, they already pay him like a tier 1 head coach. So
yep.
I think you should win like a tier 1 head coach if you're going to be paid like one. And I agree with you. If not now, when? This is the most vulnerable Alabama has looked. And the more interesting subplot I'd say in that game, JD, is Pete Golding. Pete Golding was Alabama's defensive coordinator. Here's a guy who's told by the fan base, you're the problem. We need to fix you. Fixing things involves getting rid of you. Now he gets to come back and say, maybe it wasn't me.
Yeah, I'm sure he would. Welcome that moment, if you will, being able to kind of go face to face with the good folks in Tuscaloosa and let them know that he wasn't, in fact, the problem. We've talked about this Week 4 slate. It's going to be absolutely incredible. And there's so many high-profile matchups, so many big brands. Andy, what are some games that are getting overlooked, or even some storylines that are getting overlooked in your mind when it comes to this weekend?
Well, how about the 2024 Pac-12 championship game, Oregon State versus Washington State? The Beavers and the Cougars are undefeated, both of them. They're both very good. Oregon State, they went into San Diego State and beat them 26-7. Like, I realize to a casual fan that probably doesn't sound that great, but San Diego State is hard to dominate. They've given Pac-12 teams massive problems over the years. Oregon State made it look pretty easy. And Washington State, you saw them beat Wisconsin a few weeks ago. This is a really exciting game. This is a Fox game. This is another chance for the fans in Pullman to show how well they show up and say, hey, look, we got left behind, but we are a very valuable property here. You see what we bring. You see this environment. You see how great it is. And also for Oregon State to come in and say, look, we play great football on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Jonathan Smith is a hell of a coach. The DJ Uiagalelei revenge tour continues. That's an incredible game. There's another game in the Pac-12 that's really exciting with UCLA and Utah, because we haven't really gotten a chance to see what UCLA is yet. They barely scraped by Coastal Carolina early, but the competition level hasn't been that high. Utah, maybe Cam Rising comes back. Maybe.
I hope so.
I can't wait to see this game, because it's going to be two teams that are really physical up front and want to just mash each other. And I think it will get a little bit wild.
I mean, going back to what we were saying about Pete Golding and kind of his what's up now moment with Alabama, like DJ Uiagalelei had to have been watching that Monday night game where Clemson goes to Duke and just kind of sitting there with his arms folded like, well, I guess now they know. I guess now we see it wasn't just the DJU problem. That's got to feel good.
He dropped some hints in the offseason. Remember Bruce Feldman wrote that story in The Athletic, and DJ was pretty upfront where he put some blame on the Clemson coaching staff, and people were like, it's just sour grapes. They stood behind you forever. How could you say that? Well, based on what we've seen, he may come out looking better in all of this. We'll see. I mean, this is a chance for Clemson to really show that what happened in Durham was the anomaly. But I do wonder with Florida State. Clearly, Florida State was playing that look-ahead game against Boston College. If they play that way, they're going to lose at Clemson. But I don't think we're going to see that version of Florida State. I think we'll see the version that we saw against LSU, and it's up to Clemson to match them athlete for athlete. And I'm not sure they can.
Doesn't feel like it. Like I look at that game and I'm just struggling to find where does Clemson generate the offense that's going to match Jordan Travis. Even if he's dinged up, you got Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson. Like, who matches up with Jaheim Bell, even though, Clemson has a lot of dudes on that defense. I think he's a problem in himself. Like, we didn't even touch on that game really, but that one is going to be very, very intriguing when it comes to what Florida State's going to be in the ACC. And we talked about Duke. Like, Notre Dame has to go to Duke. That was off my radar, but they don't get to play them in South Bend. They go to Durham, North Carolina. We could see Duke, Florida State for the ACC title. How weird would that be?
We could. It's wild. But Florida State has to get over this hump first. They've got to overcome this. So they haven't beaten Clemson at Clemson since 2013, which that was quite a coming out party. That was a game where you knew Florida State was a national title contender that season. But then they haven't beaten Clemson at all since 2014, which is that weird game in Tallahassee when Jameis Winston was suspended for getting up on the table and yelling stuff. And
came out in uniform.
If Dabo starts Deshaun Watson instead of Cole Stout, Clemson wins that game. It was very strange. But think about it. This is 9 years ago. Florida State has not won this series in 9 years.
It's time. If not now, like they're saying for Ole Miss and Bama, if not now for Florida State, then when? Andy, I appreciate you so much making so much time. If y'all haven't yet checked out Andy's show on this very channel, 1, do that. 2, get in the podcast feed. Andy Staples on 3, Spotify, on Apple, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you find the show. Andy, appreciate you, man. Enjoy South Bend. Enjoy Week 4. Going to be a smorgasbord, if you will, on this college football Saturday, this Week 4.
Well, you enjoy Clemson, and remember, they're not storming the field. They just meet at the paw after every game.
Exactly. Yeah, no matter how quickly they run, meeting at the paw. Andy, appreciate it as always. How about that? Andy Staples, one of the best in the game, man. Just talking some ball. Just 2 guys just talking some ball on a YouTube show. What could be better? We appreciate Andy. Excited for this Week 4 slate. Like I just said, going to be an absolute movie of a weekend. Want to hear from y'all right now. Okay, so get in the live chat. Let me know your thoughts, your questions, your concerns as we get ready to finish this week strong. Get ready for Week 4 of the college football season. Going to tell you all a little bit before we get to that, though, about HelloFresh. Now, HelloFresh will get you farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorsteps. All right, skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. All right, when it comes to options, honestly, we all understand this. More is more. All right, you don't want to eat the same thing over and over again, not just the same turkey sandwich, the same chicken and rice. With HelloFresh, the menu includes 40 recipes and over 100 add-on items to choose from every single week. When you get HelloFresh, you know you're getting top-notch produce, okay? Some kind of these meal services, these meal kits, you get some produce, get some meat, and you're like, I don't know. I don't know if I trust that. I don't know about that one, boss. I'm not sure that I feel 100% comfortable putting that into my body. HelloFresh, not the case. Like I said, top-notch produce travels from the farm to your door in less than 7 days. So, go to HelloFresh.com/50JD. This is a killer deal. Use code 50JD for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. Okay, so that's go to HelloFresh.com/50JD. Use code 50JD. 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. America's #1 meal kit with the hard count, handshake emoji. Life is good, eat good, live good, watch college football good, honestly. So we appreciate them rocking with us, and we appreciate them getting all of us ready for college football. I don't want to say season. College football last 2/3 of the season, maybe the right way to go about it. We appreciate HelloFresh. All right, let's get into the live chat now. I want to hear from y'all, and who better to unpack it all, to break it all down with, than the best kickball player in Germantown, Nashville, Tennessee. And I want to let him tell the story, but he went 2 for 2 last night. All right, so to bring him in, keeper of the queue, Nick Brake. Nick, how we doing, big dog?
What's up, JD? How you doing?
Big night last night. Big night last night.
Dude, we were down 1 in the last inning, and we lost 8-0. So
okay, but you at the dish went 2 for 2. Okay,
2 for 2. Yeah, played a good defense. So I was like, man, I'm just gonna have to put it where I'm gonna put it. Didn't kick the ball very hard. Kept it in the infield. Some would call that a bunt. Others would call it getting on base.
Yeah, if we're playing Moneyball, dude, Brad Pitt is blowing up your phone. Jonah Hill loves you, dude. You're an Oakland A.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's you.
Philip Seymour Hoffman's my coach.
Okay.
He's the coach in Moneyball.
I'll take your word for it. Yeah, I was going to say that's about as far as my my intellect goes when it comes to naming the actors within that movie. Nick, what's going on in the chat, brother? What we got from the good people?
Well, a good friend of the show, frequent commenter, Callip, asked JD, how long do Colorado last with the worst defense in the country? Worked ranked 113th right now through 3 games.
Hey, not the worst. 113th. There's like 133 FBS teams, so it's not the worst. The reality is when they start playing some of these offenses that can really start taking advantage of a defense that has given up 200 yards rushing in 2 of their 3 games, like that's when it's going to get dicey. This game against Oregon is going to be really interesting because Charles Kelly, the DC for Colorado, we talked about it in our prediction for them, but like they're going to have to cook something up now. Can't just roll the ball out there and say our guys versus your guys. Like, it's not going to work against Oregon. It's not going to work against USC. Not going to work against Utah. So in those kind of games, I think we'll see where Colorado's ceiling is at. But also, I wouldn't put it past that offense to just say, track meet, we're scoring 45, are y'all? Like, that's what happened against TCU. Defense didn't stop anybody against TCU except for a couple of timely plays. When Travis Hunter gets back, that would obviously elevate what they can do in that secondary. But as a whole, man, like they got to be timely. And again, that's one of the reasons why I don't have them as a Tier 1 Pac-12 football team right now. But again, nothing short of enormously impressive to this point for Coach Prime and company.
Okay. So Titus asked a good question. I might rephrase it just a little bit because this could get even more intriguing. So Titus asked, JD, which team would you say is the most likely to not make the college football playoff in your mind that's normally a contender? But I would say that probably is an obvious answer for Alabama right now, JD.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say what team that's currently in your top 4, so Georgia, Michigan, USC, Florida State, do you think is most likely to miss out, and why?
That's a great question. I think by nature of the way the conference is situated and by nature of what their schedule is going to ask of them, within my top 4 right now, we're a little bit higher on USC than the average college football show, and we're fine doing that. Now, to the exact same token, by nature of this question, I think USC is probably the team that I look at. Like, they got to play Oregon, they got to play Washington, they got to play Utah, like they got to play Notre Dame. So the gauntlet for them is going to be tricky. That's not even including the fact that they'll probably play in the Pac-12 title game if they're going to go and try and play for the college football playoff. So USC is the team that I would feel least confident in of those top 4 right now. But, yeah, I mean, if you're answering that question directly, Nick, I think you hit it on the head. Like, we're going to find out a lot about Bama this weekend. We're going to find out what they got under the hood when they play Ole Miss, but that's probably the answer that I would give to the original question. But USC is the team that I feel least confident in currently in our top 4, and who we projected to make the college football playoff actually at the beginning of the year, Nick.
Both of us, yeah. JD, thank you very much to Titus. Hartman for Heisman says me and JD are on the same page on that take. Okay. Maybe on the same page about Hartman for Heisman.
Okay,
that's their
Hartman
YouTube
for Heisman
name.
I mean, hey, man, this conversation around Notre Dame is going to gain some real steam if they beat Ohio State. Still got to play Clemson. They still got to play USC. But just think about the stages that would set up for Notre Dame, because the Heisman is a November award. Like, we all understand that. What you do in those 4 games is really what wins you the Heisman Trophy. Think about Caleb Williams last year and what he did against UCLA. Like, that was when he really became the Heisman guy. What he did against Notre Dame, that was when he won the Heisman, to be real with everybody. So for Sam Hartman, man, if they can get past Ohio State and kind of garner that slow ramp up and that slow trend upward, he's going to have a real chance to win that thing. So only September. They just broke out the pumpkin cream cold brew at Starbucks like end of August. So once we get into like seasonal Christmas drinks at Starbucks, then we can start to talk about the Heisman with a little bit more certainty.
I'd say the seasonal drinks are probably coming out next week, you know?
Are you a seasonal drink guy, Nick?
I don't really like coffee.
Really? Yeah, me neither, but I love the pumpkin cream cold brew. Like, that's a hit in my book.
Nice. Well, JD, our final question. Hey, look, we can go get some of those in a couple weeks. Oh, or now, probably.
Yeah.
I guess. But the last question coming from Jonathan Rayfield, big Cornhuskers fan. He's got a couple Nebraska questions. I'll ask the first one because I think this one is really up in the air right now. Do you think Nebraska can still make it to a bowl game with losing to both Minnesota and Colorado, most likely losing to Michigan?
Dude, that's a good question. I mean, that was the big thing that we were asking after they dropped that game to Colorado, because the opportunities now, if you're doing that whole kind of win-loss thing that is, just honestly doesn't take a ton of skill to do. The ones that you were counting as wins, you don't know if you let's pull up the schedule and I'll give us a good gauge for this right now. So give me a second to pull this up.
I got you, JD.
The actual schedule for Nebraska, I think this is worth taking our time to pull up because I think it's a helpful exercise. When you look at what they have left, You probably penciled in wins against Minnesota, probably penciled in a win against Colorado, or at least you penciled in a win against one of those two. So left they have, if you're counting at this point, a win against Louisiana Tech, probably don't count a win against Michigan or Illinois, Northwestern, so you're at 3. I think Purdue is winnable. I think Michigan State is winnable. So what are we at, 4? Maryland, Iowa, Wisconsin, like the road gets a little bit tricky there to find our way to 6. I think you really, really needed to start out 1-1, and they started out 0-2. So it's not impossible. I don't love their chances. I still think they'll find a way to do it. But yeah, if you're looking at the schedule that Nick has pulled up on the screen, 6-6 is attainable, but much more difficult because of how they started the year. So I'll stick with what we said originally, and I'll say they get there. I say they find a way to surprise somebody in the back half of the slate and go to 6-6. But it's a tricky road for Nebraska because nobody expected Colorado to do what they did, and we're all kind of living in that college football landscape together now, where Colorado is making a real case to do some damage to the rest of their schedule and get well over that 3.5 win total. So that's where we fall on that, Nick.
Yeah.
How's that?
It's great. JD, can I guess really quick one more?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Caleb, by the way, I'll get to yours on Tuesday if you come back, because I did see this one first. He came in a little first. It's AAA asked, after winning the Heisman on NCAA 14 as a defensive end, it made me think of this question. What defensive player do you think has the best chance of winning the Heisman this season? Congrats.
I love it.
To AAA on winning the Heisman in NCAA 14. That's an accomplishment.
Difficult to do.
It is. I've never done it.
NCAA, difficult to do.
Yeah.
It's tough, even like if you're a sophomore, I don't think they give you the Heisman because you can run for like 4,000 yards and still finish second. You're like, what are we doing here? I promise you, someone runs for 4,000 yards in any college football season, they're getting the Heisman because that's record setting. When it comes to this question, though, I mean, Harold Perkins has got to be the name, right? Kind of started slow, hasn't necessarily been tearing it up as of late. I mean, he had a nice game against Mississippi State. If they cut him loose a little bit more and they kind of figure out the best way to utilize him. Brian Kelly talked about him at this press conference this weekend and said, hey, he's kind of finding his edge again. We're having him play a little bit more free. I think he's the guy that you look at. He has that game breaker potential, and LSU, I think, is going to have some games here down the stretch that if they take care of business could put him in the spotlight to have a chance at the Heisman Trophy. So we said at the top of the year, we'll stick with it right now. If a defensive player is going to win it, a true defensive player is going to win it, it's Harold Perkins. Travis Hunter missing some time probably changes the conversation around him being a Heisman guy. So we'll say Harold Perkins today. How about that, Nick?
Sounds great, man. That's all I got for you.
Good stuff, man.
We'll see you. We're out of time, so I'll see you on Tuesday, man.
Phenomenal, brother. I'll see you on Tuesday, and we will get back at it with some more predictions for Week 5. Hey, appreciate y'all being tuned in, man. This is an absolute blast. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we are live right here. Now, if you want to keep this conversation going, one, make sure you're subscribed so we can just keep the content coming your way. That's first of all. Second of all, follow me on Instagram because right there we're going to do a Q&A session tomorrow. Just me sitting on my back porch with some Starbucks, just talking ball with y'all, kind of answering it up or open it up to a question and answer. It's a lot of fun. Also, gambling picks there. So some of y'all care, some of y'all don't care. If you do care about the picks we have for the week, we went 4-1 last week, not including the at your own risk picks. So if you tailed us, good things are happening for you in the bank account. So follow me there if you want to stay with what we're doing there. And we're just going to keep this thing rolling. Cannot wait to see y'all at Clemson. Florida State, Clemson, big-time matchup, noon kick, going to be an absolute movie of a time. So excited to see y'all there from both sides of that operation. I'm JD Pickell. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all